I never meant to hear it. I was sitting in my quiet living room, phone in hand, scrolling through the day's messages when a voice memo opened by accident. At first, I thought it was nothing, just background chatter. But then I recognized Anna's voice, my own daughter, steady and cold in a way I had never heard before. And David, her husband, chiming in with a plan that made my stomach twist. They were talking about me, about sending me to a nursing home, about selling the house I built with years of sacrifice, as if my life could be stripped away like an old coat no one wanted anymore. I froze. My hands trembled so hard I nearly dropped the phone. My heart pounded like it wanted to break out of my chest. All the love, the trust, the countless nights I stayed awake to keep her safe, reduced to this betrayal I wasn't supposed to hear. I remember staring at the walls around me, the photos of birthdays and Christmas mornings, wondering if any of it had ever truly meant something to her. For a moment, the weight of it pressed down on me until I thought I'd collapse. I felt the kind of heartbreak that hollows you out, that makes you question your worth. But beneath the ache, something else stirred. Anger. Resolve. If they thought I was too weak to fight for my dignity, they were wrong. I wasn't just a mother to Anna. I was a woman who had endured and survived more than she ever knew. That night, as I sat in the silence of my home, I made a promise to myself I would not go quietly into their plan, and to understand why. You have to know what it took to raise her, what it cost me to give her everything. I was only 20 when Anna was born. Too young, some would say, and they were right in many ways. I didn't have a partner to lean on, and my parents had passed too soon, so it was just me and this tiny girl who depended on me for everything. I remember holding her in the hospital, her little fists clenched, her cries sharp and demanding. In that moment, I promised myself that no matter what it took, I would give her a better life than the one I had. It wasn't easy. I worked 2 jobs most of her childhood days at the diner, nights cleaning offices. My hands were always raw from bleach, my feet blistered from standing too long. Still, I found ways to make things stretch. When her jeans ripped, I patched them carefully by hand, staying up past midnight with a needle and thread. When money was tight, I sold the gold locket my mother left me, the one thing of hers I had held on to. I told myself it was worth it, because it paid for Anna's school supplies that year. There were nights when I skipped dinner so she could have seconds, times when I walked instead of paying for the bus, just to save $1 or $2. Yet, in the middle of all that struggle, there were moments that made it bearable. Watching her smile when I surprised her with a used bike I had bargained for at a garage sale. Hearing her laughter as we shared popcorn on the couch, even though the electricity had been shut off and we were sitting in candlelight. Those sacrifices became my rhythm of life. Each hardship softened by the hope that I was building something for her. I thought one day she would look back and see not just the patched clothes or the secondhand toys, but the love stitched into every choice I made. I believed it would bring us closer, that gratitude would bloom between us as she grew older. Now, sitting here with the sound of that voice memo echoing in my ears, I can't help but wonder if all those sacrifices meant anything to her at all. When Anna and David first suggested moving in, I felt a quiet sense of relief. I imagined evenings where we would sit around the table sharing meals, laughter filling the rooms that had grown too quiet. I thought maybe, after years of distance, I would finally have my daughter close again. For a little while, I allowed myself to believe this was the beginning of something warm, something healing. But almost as soon as they settled in, the atmosphere shifted. Little comments at first, remarks about the faded curtains or how the old sofa looked worn out. I brushed it off, telling myself they were just trying to help freshen things up. But then, without asking, furniture started being rearranged. My favorite armchair, the one I always sat in with a book, was pushed into a corner. My framed photos were boxed up to make room for their decor. Each small change left me feeling more like a guest in my own house. It wasn't just the furniture. David insisted on handling the bills, saying it was simpler if he took over. Suddenly, I wasn't writing the checks anymore or even seeing what was being paid. Groceries appeared that I hadn't chosen, and meals were planned without asking what I liked. Even the thermostat seemed to be under their control. I'd wake up shivering or sweating, realizing the temperature had been changed without a word. At first, I told myself these were just adjustments, natural shifts when two households blended. But the truth settled in slowly and heavily. Every time I opened a drawer and found my things moved, every time Anna brushed off my opinion with a polite smile, I felt a little piece of my space slip away. The walls were the same, the rooms familiar, yet it no longer felt like home. My name was on the deed, but my voice no longer seemed to matter inside these walls. What was supposed to be a chance for closeness was becoming something else entirely, a slow suffocation I couldn't quite name. And I had no idea then that this tightening grip was only leading to something far more devastating. It happened so casually, in a moment I wasn't expecting. I was scrolling through my phone, checking messages the way I usually do before bed, when I noticed a voice memo I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was just a reminder I had accidentally recorded, but curiosity made me press play. The voices that filled the room made my blood run cold. Anna's voice, my own daughter's, low and sharp. David's voice, calm but calculating. I froze as I listened, hardly believing what I was hearing. They were talking about me, about my house, about transferring papers, as if my life and everything I had worked for were just obstacles to clear. I caught phrases about forging signatures, about making sure everything was lined up when I was out of the picture. I stopped the recording, my hand trembling so badly I nearly dropped the phone. My heart hammered against my chest, each beat louder than the last. For a moment, I thought surely I had misunderstood. Surely I had misheard. But when I pressed play again, the words were even clearer, more cruel the second time. It was like the floor dropped out from under me. The people I trusted most, the people I sacrificed everything for, were plotting not just to take my home, but to erase me altogether. The silence of the room was deafening after the recording ended. I sat there staring at the walls, the familiar pictures and furniture, and none of it felt safe anymore. Tears came hot and fast, but behind the grief was something sharper, something that steadied me. I realized in that moment I couldn't be passive, couldn't just let them strip me of everything. They wanted me silent, compliant, gone, but I still had my voice, my wits, and my will. That night, sitting in the quiet with my phone clutched tight in my hands, I made a vow. They thought they were moving me like a pawn on their board, but I wasn't done fighting. Not yet. The morning after I heard that voice memo, I dressed carefully and drove to the bank. My hands shook on the steering wheel, but my mind was steady. I knew I had to act before Anna and David made their next move. Walking through those glass doors, I felt like I was stepping into a battlefield. But this time, I wasn't the victim. I was prepared. I asked to review my accounts, and as the clerk brought out the papers, my breath caught in my throat. There it was, my name scribbled across a withdrawal form, but it wasn't my handwriting. The strokes were too heavy, the letters off. I had lived with my own signature for decades. I knew it better than anyone. Seeing it forged on paper was like being stabbed all over again. But instead of collapsing, I straightened my back. I told them to freeze the accounts, to cancel any outside access. I moved funds into a new account that only I controlled. I requested certified copies of every suspicious document, tucking them carefully into my bag as evidence. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of relief. I didn't stop there. I changed my online passwords, updated my insurance policies, and rewrote the beneficiary. Instead of leaving everything in the hands of a daughter who plotted against me, I directed part of it to a charity for single mothers. That decision wasn't just practical, it was symbolic. It was my way of saying my life and my sacrifices would mean something, whether Anna honored them or not. Walking out of the bank, sunlight hit my face, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. They thought they could erase me, but I had just taken the first step in protecting myself, and I knew I wouldn't fight this battle alone. There was one person I could trust, my niece Brooke. I walked into Brooke's office just after lunch, my heart steady, but my mind sharp. I had tucked my phone into my pocket, already set to record. I wasn't there for small talk, I needed the truth, and I needed it in her own words. She looked startled to see me, shifting nervously in her chair. I kept my tone calm, almost gentle, but there was steel beneath it. I told her I knew about the voice memo, that I had already seen forged documents with my name. Her face paled, and I saw her throat tighten as she swallowed hard. I pressed, not with anger, but with precision. I reminded her that I had always treated her like family, that I had trusted her. Then I let the silence stretch, giving her space to either lie or come clean. The weight of that silence broke her faster than shouting ever could. Her hands shook as she admitted it, yes. She had signed papers she shouldn't have. Yes. Anna and David had pushed her into it, promising her a share if she cooperated. Her voice cracked under the weight of her own guilt. I listened, each word a dagger, but I stayed composed. My phone quietly captured it all. When she slid a folder from her desk drawer, I felt both sorrow and relief. Inside were copies of altered forms, with my name twisted into something unrecognizable. I took them without a word, sliding them into my bag. The betrayal cut deep, but the evidence gave me strength. Walking out of that office, I felt the air fill my lungs in a new way. For weeks, I had been drowning in fear and grief. But now, I carried proof. Proof that couldn't be denied, twisted, or erased. I wasn't powerless anymore. I had the truth in my hands, and I knew exactly what to do next. The morning I walked into the lawyer's office, my stomach twisted the way it used to before doctor's appointments. The waiting room smelled faintly of leather and paper, and every tick of the wall clock seemed to stretch my nerves thinner. For so long, I had felt cornered, like prey. But in my bag, I carried the voice memo, the forged papers, and Brooke's confession. I carried proof. When I sat across from the lawyer, I laid everything out. He studied the documents, nodding slowly, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight shift off my shoulders. My fear wasn't irrational, it was real. And now, someone with authority saw it too. We went step by step, He explained how my accounts could be locked down, how my home title could be secured, how new safeguards could prevent anyone from touching what was mine without my say. Each word felt like a brick being laid into a fortress around me. I wasn't just defending myself, I was building a future that couldn't be stolen. Signing the new will was harder than I expected. My hand trembled, not out of doubt, but from the gravity of it. Every signature was a line drawn in the sand. I shifted beneficiaries, set up clear instructions for my care, and appointed someone trustworthy outside the family to hold power of attorney. These were decisions I should have made years ago, but now I made them with a clarity sharpened by betrayal. The lawyer slid the final folder across the polished desk, and I tucked it into my bag with a deep breath. Relief spread through me, not the kind that makes you collapse, but the kind that straightens your back and steadies your steps. As I walked out into the crisp afternoon, the air felt different, lighter, safer. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the next blow. I was prepared. I had taken back my voice, my home, and my future, and as the elevator doors closed behind me, I knew exactly what came next: distance, peace, and the freedom to finally live on my own terms. Letting go of Anna was the hardest part. For so many years, my identity was wrapped around being her mother, her protector, her foundation. To accept that she had chosen greed over love was a grief unlike any other. I mourned her not as if she had died, but as if she had walked away from the bond we once shared. That ache will always live in me, but it no longer rules me. After the legal papers were signed and my defenses secured, I stood in the quiet of my house and realized it was mine again. Mine to breathe in, mine to fill with warmth. The first thing I did was move their things out of sight. I replaced the curtains Anna had insisted on with ones I chose soft blue, catching the morning light. I bought fresh flowers and placed them on the table where once their bills and demands had cluttered the space. Every change, small as it was, felt like reclaiming pieces of myself. I began saying yes again. Yes to coffee with old friends who had waited patiently for me. Yes to volunteering at the local shelter, where my time felt valuable instead of exploited. Yes to sitting on the porch in the evening, reading without interruption. Listening to crickets instead of criticism. The loneliness still whispers at times, reminding me of what I lost. But alongside it now is peace, a deeper, quieter kind of love, the kind I give myself when I choose joy, when I choose calm, when I choose to live. I know now that survival is not just about defense. It is about rebirth. It is about planting new roots, even in the soil of betrayal. I cannot change what my daughter did, but I can change how I move forward, and I choose peace. Looking back, my story is not just about betrayal, it is about survival, and the quiet strength we all carry when life forces us to stand alone. I was broken when I first heard that voice memo. The pain of realizing that my own daughter had chosen greed over love nearly crushed me. But step by step, I learned that heartbreak does not have to be the end of a life. It can be the beginning of a new one. What I discovered through this journey is simple but powerful. Dignity is non-negotiable. Self-respect must come before pleasing others, even family. We can love deeply and forgive generously, but we must also protect ourselves. Boundaries are not walls, they are the foundations that keep us safe, that let us give love freely without losing ourselves. I chose to take back my life, my home, and my peace. In doing so, I realized that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the quiet choices we make every day to say no, to walk away, to choose peace over chaos. My past cannot be changed, but my future belongs to me and to you listening now. I want to say this: never believe you are powerless. No matter who tries to silence you or strip you of your worth, you have the right to stand tall. Protect your heart, your dignity, and your dreams. And still, believe in kindness. Believe in love, not the kind that betrays, but the kind you build for yourself and those who truly honor you. If my story touched you, I invite you to share it. Leave a comment with your own reflections. And if you know someone who needs this reminder, please pass it along. Together, we can remind each other that even in heartbreak, there is always hope. I never expected my world to fall apart on an ordinary afternoon. I was sitting in my living room, sorting through some bills, when my phone buzzed with a new notification. A voice memo had arrived, but it wasn't meant for me. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some random file. But when I pressed play, my heart stopped. It was my daughter Anna's voice. I leaned in closer, frowning, straining to make sense of her words. Then I heard David, her husband, his tone cold and calculating. They weren't talking about work or errands. They were talking about me. My hands started trembling as I listened. They were discussing how to move me into a facility, as if I were a burden to be set aside. And worse, they were plotting to take my home, the one place I had built with every ounce of love and sacrifice. My chest tightened, my breath shallow. I thought I had misheard. I replayed the memo once, then twice, then a third time, each replay carving deeper into me. Their words were clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was betrayal. My own daughter, the child I had given everything to, was scheming to strip me of my independence, my dignity, my life as I knew it. The room felt colder, the walls pressing in. I clutched my phone so hard my knuckles ached. How could Anna, my Anna, speak of me like a burden, a problem to solve, a house to seize? I felt a sharp sting behind my eyes, but no tears came, just a hollow ache. In that moment, something inside me cracked. Shock and disbelief wrapped around me like chains. But underneath it all, a flicker of resolve began to burn. If they thought I would surrender quietly, they had forgotten who I am. Before I tell you what I did next, I need to take you back. You need to understand everything I gave up, the years of sacrifice that led to this moment. Only then will you see the weight of this betrayal. When I think back to the beginning, I see myself as a frightened 22-year-old holding a newborn in my arms, wondering how in the world I was going to manage. Anna's father had already slipped away, leaving only silence where promises used to be. It was just the two of us against the world. And from that moment on, I vowed I would never let her go without, no matter the cost to me. Those early years were a blur of exhaustion and determination. I worked mornings at a diner, afternoons cleaning houses, and nights stocking shelves at the grocery store. I remember the ache in my feet, the stiffness in my back, the way my eyelids felt like lead. But none of it mattered when I saw her sleeping soundly in her crib. I patched her clothes again and again, turning fraying fabric into something passable. I sold the few pieces of jewelry I had inherited from my mother to cover school supplies. I skipped meals so she could have a full plate. These weren't sacrifices in my mind, they were choices made out of love. There were moments of joy that made the hardship bearable. I remember the way her little hand would slip into mine when we walked to the library. The pride in her smile when she brought home a gold star from school. The nights we curled up together on the couch, sharing a blanket because I couldn't afford to turn the heat higher. Those small, tender moments were my treasures. As she grew older, I worked even harder to give her opportunities I never had. I saved every spare dollar for her piano lessons, for field trips, for college funds. When she wanted to join cheerleading, I took on an extra cleaning job to cover the uniforms. I watched her walk across that high school stage, diploma in hand, and I cried not just because I was proud, but because I felt the years of struggle had been worth it. I thought the bond we shared was unbreakable, built on sweat, sacrifice, and endless devotion. Of course, there were lonely nights. Times when I longed for companionship, for someone to share the burdens with. But I pushed those desires aside. I told myself I could be content with watching Anna thrive, even if it meant I would always stand in the background, tired but proud. My dreams became hers, and that was enough for me. Looking back now, I realize how much of myself I poured into building her future. Every sacrifice, every lost opportunity, every moment I silenced my own needs was for her. I never doubted for a second that she would understand one day, that she would look at me with gratitude and love. And maybe that's why the voice memo cut so deeply. Because when you give everything for someone, you never imagine they would see you as a burden to be managed or a house to be taken. You never imagined the hands you once held would one day plot against you. I held on to those memories for strength, but they also sharpened the sting of betrayal. For all the love I gave, this was the return. And that truth was something I could no longer ignore.